The sky had just broken. The faint light of dawn dyed the vast sea surface golden. The thin mist like white silk fluttered on the waves. On the wharf, groups of fishermen hurriedly walked. The sound of rubber boots hitting the wooden floor echoed with the loud chatter. The sound of cranes and the clanging of chains. The giant fishing boats were ready, the hulls covered with shiny new paint. The giant iron propellers hidden under the dark blue water, just waiting for the departure whistle to cut through the wave. And rush out to the open sea. The atmosphere on the wharf was filled with energy, because everyone knew that today would be a long, challenging voyage, but also promised to bring back a plentiful catch, possibly up to hundreds of tons. Experienced sailors stood by the ship's side, checking each anchor rope, each turn of the net winch, each knot securely tied. In the hold, the chef prepared breakfast for the whole team, hot rice trays. A few plates of braised fish, vegetable soup and bread, enough to fuel a hard day's work at sea. The fragrant smell of coffee mixed with the salty wind, wafting across the deck. At the back, the net compartment was open. Giant nets rolled into thick, heavy rings, neatly stacked so that when they reached the fishing spot, they could just be released according to the correct procedure. Orange buoys, auxiliary nets and auxiliary anchor lines were crisscrossed, ready for deployment. In deep waters. When the long whistle sounded, the ship shook slightly and slowly left the dock. Waves began to gently lap against the side. Pure white seagulls flew behind, waiting for the fish scraps to be thrown out from the processing compartment. The cool sea breeze blew in, carrying with it a distinctive salty smell. Each person on board has a clear position and task, from the captain who controls the ship, the navigator who directs the direction. To the group of sailors operating the machinery, the group in charge of the net, the group of fish sorting, all coordinate smoothly like a giant machine operating on the sea surface. The further away, the bigger the waves. The ship tilts slightly with each wave. But for those who have spent their lives at sea, this is a familiar rhythm. The captain uses the positioning system and sonar to search for schools of fish. The screen displays dense color patches moving below, a sign of a large school of fish. The fishermen are all eager, their eyes on the screen, waiting for the signal to drop the net. When the ship reaches the chosen coordinates, the sailors immediately take their positions. The giant nets begin to be released, meter by meter, drifting along the water. The winch roars, the gears rotate continuously. In the distance, orange buoys glowed against the blue background, marking the boundary of the net that was gradually enveloping the school of fish below. The sea surface was unusually turbulent, thousands of fish thrashing violently, creating large ripples. When the net was closed, the signal to pull the net rang out. The winches started working at full capacity, pulling each heavy section of net onto the deck. The seawater poured down like a waterfall, and then from the mesh of the net, sparkling silver patches appeared. Fish. Countless fish. Fish, layer upon layer, thrashing violently. The air on the deck was hot. The shouts of the fishermen mixed with the sounds of machinery, water, and fish squirming, creating a bustling harmony of the sea. The nets were stretched to the limit, pouring a shower of silvery fish onto the deck. Each fish was like a small mirror reflecting the sunlight, making the entire deck light up for a moment. The fishermen moved quickly between the narrow spaces, one hand holding the net, the other pulling the net. The other gathering the fish and pushing them into the containers. The salty seawater splashed on their faces, mixed with sweat, but no one bothered to wipe it away. Everyone focused on harvesting each fish, because they knew that every second that passed meant the fish could escape. And the productivity of the whole trip depended on this moment. The engine roared steadily, keeping the boat steady against the big waves. The thick rubber gloves were covered with slippery fish scales. But the fishermen's calloused hands still controlled them skillfully. The containers were filled quickly. The fish were dumped into the cold compartment below, where the industrial refrigerator worked continuously to maintain freshness. Every time a barrel was full, two strong men would immediately carry it down, their feet firmly stepping on the shaking deck, as if they were used to these violent movements. Large waves suddenly came, causing the ship to tilt sharply, but no one faltered. Each person adjusted their center of gravity, held tightly to the ship's side or the anchor rope, and continued working. The sound of fish splashing mixed with the sound of waves, the sound of nets whistling, and the laughter of the resilient men. In a corner of the deck, another group was using sharp knives to remove the stuck or damaged fish, quickly sorting them by size and type. Large fish were placed separately on wooden trays. Small fish were gathered in plastic baskets, all of which would be sold at a good price at the port. When the first net was finished, the surrounding sea surface was still undulating with the silhouettes of uncaught fish. The captain decided to continue to cast another circle of net. Once again, the sound of the winch rang out, the heavy net drifted down, and the round buoys gradually covered the open water. The fishermen took a deep breath, preparing for the second haul. The sun was higher. The bright light made the sea surface sparkle like gold, but at the same time it also made sweat run down the cheeks of the workers. The work continued like a rhythmic dance. Those on the foredeck were busy directing the net. Those on the middle deck were preparing the containers. The group on the after deck was watching the winch. No one needed to give too many orders, because everyone knew their position and operations by heart. When the second batch of fish was pulled up, the deck seemed to explode. The fish were denser, each strong fish splashing in the water, forcing the fishermen to use all their strength to keep their balance and collect them into the containers. Cheers rang out everywhere, some even whistled. The whistles carried far away in the wind. After many hours of non-stop work, the number of fish in the hold had increased rapidly. Hundreds of tons of fish, a huge amount that only the most successful fishing trips can achieve, are gradually filling the cold holds. The smell of fresh fish mixed with the smell of sea salt spreads throughout the ship. In the kitchen, the chef has begun preparing lunch, a pot of hot fish soup, a few batches of grilled fish served with white rice, and some spare vegetables. The team will need to recharge for the next hours of work. The ship continues to circle around the fish school area, occasionally dropping more nets. Each time the net is closed, the deck bustles, like a small festival. For those working in the sea. No one is calculating too much right now, but everyone knows that today's trip will bring in a significant income. Bright smiles, excited eyes, and laughter echoing across the sea are the clearest proof of that joy after a quick lunch break. Just a few spoons of hot fish soup and some white rice were enough to warm the stomach. Everyone quickly returned to their positions. The captain signaled the pilot to continue to lead the ship to another area of water. Where the sonar screen had just shown a dense cloud, a sure sign of a giant school of fish. The rumbling sound of the ship's engine mixed with the whistling wind. Each wave hitting the side hard, splashing water, but no one slowed down even a beat. Eyes that were too used to the bright sunlight in the middle of the ocean still attentively followed the signal, just waiting for the command to drop the net. In the net storage compartment, the was ready. The nets were neatly arranged on large rolls. The edges of the nets were tightly tied to the positioning buoys. When the command was given, the whole team coordinated rhythmically, dropping each meter of net into the water. The net spread out like a giant dragon stretching under the sea. The meshes were large and durable, ready to surround any school of fish that got in. As the net closed, the air on deck seemed to thicken. Everyone looked toward the winch, which began to pull the cable as tight as a bowstring, vibrating with each beat from the weight below. This time, when the first silver flakes emerged from the water, everyone froze for a few seconds. There were so many fish that the net looked like a solid mass being lifted up. Cheers rang out, mixed with calls to each other. Calloused hands quickly pulled, gathered, scooped, and put the fish into the hold. Seawater flooded the deck, up to the ankles, freezing. Cold, large fish weighing several kilos thrashed violently, sometimes bouncing off the net, forcing the carrier to jump to the side to avoid slipping. However, no one was upset. On the contrary, laughter rang out as if each fish was a precious prize. The tanks were full again, and the cold hold below the ship became increasingly crowded. The refrigerator was running at full capacity. The cold air was spreading out hazily, but it was still not fast enough to cool down the huge amount of fish. that had just fallen. In the corner of the processing compartment, a few people began to cut open the large fish, remove the organs and pack them right on the boat to keep them fresh. Sharp steel knives slid across the fish's body, each slice neatly, the dark red blood mixed with seawater flowing down the drain. This work required agility and precision, because at sea, time and temperature were always the biggest enemies of fishing. When this net had just ended, the sky suddenly turned gray. Thick clouds rolled in from the horizon, signaling a storm was forming. The wind began to get stronger. Large waves crashed against the side of the ship, causing the entire hull to shake. The captain ordered a temporary halt to the netting, focused on anchoring the ship and ensuring the safety of the fish hold. The fishermen quickly pulled large tarps to cover the hold, securing any items that could be swept away by the waves. The rain poured down, each cold drop hitting the face, mixed with the salty taste of the sea. The ship rocked violently, the sound of metal clashing rang out loudly, but everyone remained calm, because this was part of the job. The sea always challenged those who dared to step into it. After only about an hour, the clouds gradually cleared, the wind calmed down and the sea surface gradually became calmer, revealing soft ripples under the red sunset. Taking advantage of the remaining time of the day, the ship quickly returned to the fishing spot. A final net was lowered as the orange sunlight spread over the water. The last catch of the day was pulled up in the warm light, making the fish scales look like gold. The winch slowly stopped, the waves lapped gently, and everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Today, they had collected a huge amount of fish, enough to call it a brilliant success. The night sky fell, the whole ship was immersed in the steady sound of the engine and the yellow light from the cabin. The fishermen gathered around, eating dinner and telling stories, their laughter blending with the distant sound of the waves. They knew that tomorrow would continue, and the cycle would continue until the hold was full, ready to return to port with pride and joy the next morning. While the ship's engine was still echoing steadily in the quiet space, the eastern sky had begun to fade, signaling a new day. No one had to wake anyone up, because the bodies of those working at sea were used to this rhythm of life. Just after 4 a.m., the whole team left the sleeping compartment, put on their thick sea clothes, tightened the straps of their raincoats, put on rubber boots and woolen hats. The cold air from the sea penetrated their skin, but everyone quickly warmed up with familiar movements, pulling the rope, checking the net, starting the winch. Breakfast today was simply white rice, some grilled dried fish and a pot of steaming hot tea. But no one complained, because they knew the next few hours would be a series of continuous and strenuous work. The captain and navigator had been observing the sonar screen since the night before, identifying areas with higher fish density than yesterday. This is deeper water. The waves are also more violent, But this is the place that is the gold mine that fishermen expect as the ship of approached the area. The sky was still red. The command to cast the net was given. The winch started immediately, and the giant net rolled down to the surface of the water. The boys stood out against the white-capped waves, gradually enveloping a large area. Under the sea, the giant school of fish moved in groups, unaware that the encirclement had closed. From the deck, the fishermen could see the unusual ripples, a sign that the fish were panicking, thrashing violently within the encirclement. At the new fishing spot, the process began again: cast net, surround, pull, harvest. This time, the school of fish was even more numerous, to the point where the cable shook so violently that it seemed like it was about to snap. The fishermen had to shout to